Hey, this is Todd Phillips, and this is Freeze Frame for British Esquire.
Remember that music class we saw the other day? B-Ward, remember with all the singing?
One of the great thrills of directing films is really putting two fantastic actors across from each other. Brendan Gleeson is just a bear. He's a beast of an actor, and I found in the first film, having worked with Joaquin through the first film, the better the actor is you put him up against, the sort of better the day is, the better he is, the better the movie feels. Of course, that seems obvious, but Joaquin really responds to great actors, and Brendan Gleeson's about as legendary as it gets. So this was always a fun little dynamic.
I got you in. We're going next week.
Are you being serious?
There's a interesting dynamic between Brendan, who plays Jackie, who's kind of like the alpha male of the guards at Arkham State Hospital. So there's this interesting dynamic between him and Arthur, because Arthur's not your normal inmate. Arthur's actually a celebrity inmate. And Brendan, when you see the movie, you get the feeling that Brendan respects Arthur, but he's also a little bit jealous of Arthur and of Arthur's sort of stardom. And I think in this scene is where we kind of really get the first taste of that in the film.
I am being serious. And the Bible. Wasn't that hard either. Ever since they made that TV movie about you, everybody still thinks you're a star.
And, that's your first inclination of like, oh, that's interesting that he's bringing up this TV film about Arthur that was made. And you can see, if you go back and watch the scene, you can almost see Brendan's face change at this particular moment and as it continues.
How about you, Arthur? Do you still think you're a star?
And there's a lot going on there in that moment to me because, like I said, there's almost this competitive jealousy a little bit from Jackie, Brendan Gleeson's character, but there's also, it speaks a little bit about the duality that a large part of the movie's about, which I think you're going to see in another scene coming up. But this idea that, well, there's Arthur, and then there's Joker, and clearly Joker is this celebrated figure in some circles from the first film, in the audience of the world in the movie. And so you get this idea that there's really two sides to Arthur, which of course we all know. We've seen the first movie, and it shows up throughout this movie often. When we first meet Brendan Gleeson in the movie, he's kind of singing in the morning. He's singing, When the Saints, and he's this very jovial. But you can tell that he's a wannabe performer, that underneath the grit and grime and sort of this bear-like attitude of being a prison guard, there's a little bit of a performer under him. So selfishly, he actually tells Arthur that he got Arthur into this music therapy class because really Brendan wants to be around that. Brendan has a little bit of music in him as well. And it comes out actually after the music therapy where you see Brendan in the background, a scene that's not here, but I'll explain it, where he's kind of with the teacher singing, I've got the world on a string.
They're sending me home.
What?
This scene is really crucial in kind of explaining the dynamic. Again, dynamics is really what kind of movies are about, the dynamics between characters. But this dynamic between Lee and Arthur, more specifically Lee and Joker, it really kind of, in a not so subtle way, I think, sets up the idea that she's in love with Joker. And if you watch the movie, or when you watch the movie, or if you rewatch the movie, if you've seen it already, you'll notice she never calls him Arthur in the movie. She always refers to him as Joker, even though clearly it's Arthur that she's talking to, for example, in this scene. It's also the first time you get I think if somebody who's attuned would realize there's something a little off about this girl, and maybe her story doesn't totally make sense. I mean, why did they let her into this isolation cell where Arthur is? She's telling, they're saying, you're a bad influence on me. It's a little bit of her setting herself up as an important figure in Arthur's life, as somebody who's meaningful even to the outside, guards or whoever.
They're saying you're a bad influence on me. gonna be good for us. Now I can be at your trial every day. I can see you every day until you get out. We're gonna build a mountain.
You perfect.
I wanna see the real you.
I think that's really one of the most key lines in the scene and in their relationship in the whole movie. He says, "You brought makeup," which is such a bizarre thing that she would bring that to this, again, isolation cell. And she says, "I want to see the real you," meaning until she puts makeup on him, she doesn't think she's talking to the real him. And to me, that's really the tragic story of Arthur's life and kind of what the movie is about, this identity and this idea that somebody like Arthur can't really be themselves if they're expecting to find love. They have to kind of put that mask back on and be who other people want them to be. And I find that really tragic. So here she goes applying the Joker makeup. This also, I should say, just cinematically, this is one of those scenes with a single source light through the cell window, tiny little set. Obviously, it's a set we built that barely fits, the two of them and a camera operator. And it's really intimate and really tight in there. And you look at a movie scene and you go, oh, okay. But you got to imagine we're there for 7-8 hours shooting this scene from a few different angles. It was, but it was a great day because I love the scenes where Lee is really understated and subtle, and that's the stuff in the beginning before she kind of finds herself. Those really quiet moments with her, I think, is where Gaga really shines, of course, outside of the singing and all the other stuff she brings to the movie. It's the vulnerability and the quiet moments that really get me. She's doing this crude version of Arthur's makeup.
It's just us now.
Another red flag. It's just us now. Sort of one of the things about the title Folie, Deux, it means sort of shared delusion or a shared madness. And it's a true psychiatric term, and it's very often defined by the idea of one of those two people trying to separate themselves from everybody else to make it important that we're a unit. It's us against the world. So literally her saying it's just us now is kind of indicative of that.
You still want to die?
Well, at the time, it certainly seemed a lot easier than living. But that's not me anymore. That's not who I am.
That wasn't really you.
Going back to what I said earlier about Brendan Gleeson, this is another glaring example of, okay, I've got this 8-page scene between two actors, and I just want to put Joaquin. I want to see Joaquin go toe-to-toe with somebody just tremendous. And so I reached out to Steve Coogan, unsure if he was available, unsure if he would do it. He responded. We talked on the phone. He came to L.A., and I think he landed the night before we filmed this scene. This is 2 days. And he just showed up on set, and he's sitting, 4 feet from Joaquin Phoenix and doing a essentially 8-page scene. But to me, again, as a director, I liken it in the first movie. There's a 9-page scene with Joaquin and Robert De Niro, the infamous scene, of course, where Joaquin goes toe-to-toe with arguably the greatest actor that's ever lived, Robert De Niro. And it's the best. And to put him again against just a legend like Steve, I don't know. I know for me it was just a blast. I know Joaquin was blown away by Steve. And let's watch a little bit of it.
That's
Let me get this straight.
That's not what I
So
meant.
your defense is it was the Joker who did it.
Again, it's this thematic thing about identity. But of course, Arthur doesn't mean it like that, and he says it. But as you often find with investigative reporters of this ilk, they like kind of the gotcha moment. But really, even underneath that, this idea of identity, what's going on in this scene is a little bit about the corruption of entertainment, which I know sounds ridiculous, but the movie has a few themes in it. Of course, corruption is one of them. Corruption of the judicial system, of the prison system. But even more than that is the corruption of entertainment. And this scene is really a perfect example of it. Meaning, if in the States, often we put trials on television, we'll put a murderer like Arthur on TV and sell ads during the interview. We'll have presidential elections with graphics that make it look like a wrestling match. The idea being, if everything is entertainment, what is actually entertainment that we know? So it's this idea of corruption of entertainment, which I think this scene represents, and Steve does such a good job as one of those types. I remember looking when we were writing this movie at like old Tom Snyder interviews with Charles Manson, this idea. It's been obviously done for years, again, in the States at least. I'm not sure if they do it much over here, where these kind of tell-all interviews, these exclusive interviews with a murderer, and it's just done in such a dramatic fashion, and to me it's really kind of a sad state on, as I said, entertainment.
An insanity defense.
Okay, I don't know about a defense.
This alternate personality, this killer clown in you killed Murray. Who am I speaking to now? Which one of you is here? The poor, low IQ Arthur Fleck, or the Joker who goaded a bunch of no-good punks?
Or do you really care? You don't. You're just like Murray. You're just like everyone. You want sensationalism. You don't care about. You just want to talk about my mistakes. You want to talk about the things that I did in the past, not about who I am now, not how I'm different now.
I mean, it's just, I could really watch that scene a lot. Obviously, I've seen it a million times, but Joaquin's portrayal of Arthur is so heartbreaking because he just wants people to understand who he is, and everybody's just interested in the sensational part, in the Joker, in the intrigue of the murders and the thing, and Arthur just wants people to know who he is. Again, I find it really tragic.
That's what we should be talking about, Patty.
Well, thank you for watching, and please go catch Joker Folie Deux in cinemas now.